Good afternoon. My name is Pat Smith Thurman, and I'm speaking to you from 10th Street Gallery in downtown St. Louis. 10th Street Gallery is owned by myself and my husband, Solomon Thurman, who also happens to be a professional artist. We are exhibiting a show entitled St. Louis Blues Show. It's in celebration of the National Blues Museum, which opened on April 2nd. This show will be up through July 9th, and through this period, we are hosting gallery talks for all of our featured St. Louis artists. I hope you enjoy this gallery talk. We plan 2 or 3 additional talks before the show closes on July 9th. This talk today is by Sami Bentil and Howard Berry.
I'll address the most eldest person here in this gathering. Who would that be? Is there anybody in the 70s?
Anybody else?
70 years old?
No, honey bunny. You got that.
Between 69 and 68? 67? May I have the permission to address the gathering?
Yes, you may.
This is part of African tradition that in any gathering, to call attention, you'll have to find the eldest person and get their permission. And what it normally does is, it reminds us all that there's an elder in our midst. So we listen. Today being Sunday, the name Sun is acknowledging the greatest source of light and life that we have here on earth. In my language, we call the world Ewiasi, which translates literally as under the sun. Now we acknowledge that the sun that we see is the eye of our supreme creator. But when the sun falls on all that has been created, it casts a shadow. So every living being in light casts a shadow. Yes. The light illuminates and it gives us strength, because without the light, there will be no life here on earth. Like we say, the sun. And we here, we've been burned by this entity or this experience that once it comes up, it gives us warmth and it gives us hope. So on this day, Sunday, my 65th birthday has fallen on a Sunday. And I'm humbled and excited because I know that I have 65 years of illumination to count on. So now I should be able to see my path clearly and make the right choices based on the experiences I've had as a human being. But the highlight of my existence has been creativity, using a God-given talent to honor and celebrate the things around me, the activities around me, and the sensations that our Supreme Creator put here for us human beings to experience. So, fast forward, 65 years, I'm here in St. Louis, over maybe 6,000, close to maybe 7,000, 8,000 miles away from my home. And my home is in Ghana, West Africa. How have I ended up here? It's the art, the creative gift that was given to me, I would say inherent, because all of us have inherited an ability to create with a God-given talent. Some of us, our ability to create comes from the things that we do with our hands, like write and draw, cook, play music. Some of us have been given the gift of oratory, that wherever we go, the stories we tell inspire and give people hope and give them strength. But the ones that we celebrate the most, that we remember, are the ones whose activities give us the power and the ability to move around. Our mothers and their sisters who were very good at cooking and cook those wonderful meals that because we've eaten those meals from infancy, today we are standing healthy and able to do the physical things that bring us joy and others joy. We're here celebrating art. In an establishment owned by our own. If we went back maybe 100 years, would there be an institution or a space like this owned by one of us that would highlight the creative expressions that we've been born with? No. I don't think in those days the people we called slave owners would even encourage the people that were working for them to express themselves this way. We've realized now through the education and worldly events that there has been a concerted effort to marginalize the expressions of people of the diaspora. Those of us who were dispersed from Africa over 500-600 years ago, and then our expressions that have actually sustained the world, that have been covered by things that will not make us see ourselves in them. But nobody stopped us from being creative. We didn't ask permission to start drawing. The relatives and parents who realized these talents were inspired to encourage us. Some were hesitant, but when they saw that we were brilliant, they would brag about us behind our backs. You see, my son drew this. My child did this. But you see, but in front of you, hey, I want you to be a doctor. I want you to be an engineer. I mean, why? What is this art? This battle for us to express the inherent gifts that God gave to us has so many different angles if artists were going to tell the stories of how they had to fight their way through to be themselves. I had to be a polite rebel. You know, my father wanted me to be an economist. When I got to what I call sixth form in the Ghana educational system, was the year before you went to college, I started doing well in economics, and fortunately for me and unfortunately for him, when he saw my grades were good, what was hidden behind his head came out. He said, you know, that art you do is child's play. You should go and do something serious, which is, to him, economics. And I said in my head, there was a chorus, economics, that is not serious. Art is what is serious to me, but I'm going to have to find a way in which I can show this man. But I rebelled, and my rebellion was not to go to any of the economic classes, so that I'd even hear something by the teacher that would stick in my head, so that if I went to do an exam, I might be forced to, if I wanted to make a mistake, go and write the right answer, I pass. So I undermined anything that was going to come in the way of my art. We're talking 1969, 70, 71. Fortunately, in 71, I got a chance to visit the States, the United States of America, and spent 3 months in New York. What my father did was give me, it was mandatory for me to go to all the museums. So I had to do a museum tour and come and write about my experience. He made us write. Weekend, our chores were after everything. You had to write what you've done in the week. And he'll come and, correct your English, make sure your punctuation marks were in the right place. and the content of your experiences saved you from having your ears pulled or something. So in those days it seemed like it was harsh, but looking back now, it inspired a sense of perfection and doing things properly. So coming here to America and going to the museums and seeing the various things that, art of the world, but what got my attention were the artifacts and things that have been brought out of Africa. And some of the most special ones seem to be in glass cases. And I was, why are they people put this? This thing must be very special for them to have it under lock and key. And I was wondering, wait a minute, but this is just some sandals, or it's some. Little did I know that those who brought our artifacts here have found that some of them had a very powerful life force that was subconsciously influencing people who came to watch them without them knowing. I'll give you a classic example. We of African descent will go to a museum and be looking at certain artifacts. But it takes you somewhere. You'll be sitting there and you get lost. Who did this? The answers never come shortly, but they work on you. And before you realize, you are learning or seeking more about where you came from, whether you liked it or not. So I had spent 3 months of this awakening, went back home and started looking at things that I had taken for granted seriously. Then it dawned on me that there are very great artists here who are phenomenal in painting, doing metal work, ceramics and fabrics. But in Africa, looking at the quality and the craftsmanship, we match them blow for blow. But there was nothing about us in the magazines and the books and those things. She said, no, I have to find out more about this. The deeper I got in, then I realized the blessing of being born in this world as a black person against the grain. Because if you look at television and you read the magazines and stuff, we are supposed to be the worst people here. But everybody is riding on our backs. And we did the good stuff. Some of us have even abandoned the good stuff of ours and are poisoning ourselves with things that are not good for us. Then it also dawned on me that for us who are creative, those who draw, those who write, those who sing, there are things we need to sing about our cultures and the things that make us who we are to keep this relay race of truth going, because through our expressions, there's some very powerful divine truth that is running through the generations that a lot of us are not always conscious of, but subconsciously we do them. It's amazing, me coming from Africa and seeing the Africanisms in a lot of in the African American behavior. The way we eat food, there's a family thing. It's amazing. It's like there's always an American slant or American version of it, which for an African who is paying attention is very encouraging. I'll give you a classic example. An African American will go to Ghana and have a dress or find some fabric and decide, oh wow, I like this fabric, and use the fabric in a way that the African normally won't. But it's because the African American has a certain freedom. We are not bound by some of those laws, And so, wow, the American put this thing this way, so I'm going to do it. And when I do it, my African person, hey, you did it this way, it's nice. Why do you like it? Oh, it's an American. Oh, then they do it. Then the African American will come and see, oh, this thing has gone to another level. So what's been happening is we've been pushing ourselves higher, musically, food-wise, so many things. But we are not conscious of what we're doing. It's the art and the songs. And so maybe the movies and things that are coming out of our expression that are actually showing these things, So let's be very observant. seeing, hearing, eating, the experience, because somewhere in our genes, there's a longing to embrace a part of ourselves that we've been so far removed. But you see, the other blessing is nothing is far away with our thoughts in mind. I mean, like a hungry person can keep himself, if let's say you've been trapped somewhere for 48 hours, I'm sure you can keep yourself alive by imagining that at your meal times you are eating. You know, I mean, the mind has done phenomenal things for a lot of us. And our mind and our souls have kept our people in spite of the experience here, which is challenging. We are still the most vital people, or when I say vital, the most blessed people here on earth. Because in our genes is a knowledge of endurance, of triumph. All we have to do is tell our story or do our thing. But the thing we do, knowing that we inherited a sense of beauty, a sense of compassion and stuff, a sense of decency, the things we do in public are the things that should normally be pleasing to the eye. Even though like now, that's been overturned because some of our people are doing things that make us feel shy and want to hide. Another thing, one of our boys or girls are going to done something dumb, which normally we didn't do before. And it comes back to the thing about it takes a village to raise a child. We're all brought up with a sense of decency and certain, norms. And we who are created this way have a responsibility that what we put forth should help in bringing our people back into that mode where we sustain each other with only good things. And so coming to the art, after 71, I spent 3 months here, went back to Ghana, more determined to pursue art as a career. When I got back home, my relatives asked me, why are you back here? Because my father had been appointed by the UN to work here in New York, so he relocated the whole family. Most people in Africa look forward to coming to America, to school, and to get better. I was back in Ghana. What are you doing here? I'm coming to the University of Science and Technology. Are you a fool? Your father has taken you to America, you've come here? I said, yeah. There's something here. Oh, come on. They brushed me off. So a lot of my relatives decided I was a fool for having abandoned America and come to Ghana because Ghana didn't have anything to offer. So I spent my life proving them wrong, not doing it to show them, but I just got deep into what I was there for. Unfortunately, there were great teachers, great professors. Some were Africans, and some were from, Europeans and America. Some of the African American professors we had were the best because they balanced the best of both worlds. They could see, and they opened our eyes to also benefit from both sides. Their technologies, their methodology, their dedication was always a great source of inspiration. And I decided that I was going to continue to practice and be as good an artist so that if I was ever put in the middle of any of the artists from all the other cultures, we should be able to stand on our own. First of all, by our ability as super craftspeople, and then understanding the culture and the heritage that we inherit, that is in our genes. Unfortunately, being somebody born with the ability to draw, I enjoy drawing. The drawing then came into painting. Fortunately, I say fortunately because I'm colorblind. And I inherited the color blindness from my mother. They say the woman passes the color blindness onto her sons. Her daughters are never colorblind. But the sons can't pass the color blindness gene onto their children. So my children are not colorblind. So that colorblind thing right now is added in our life. But what it did for me, it allowed me to feel and understand what you who see color feel to a certain extent. It also freed me or made me master the ability to draw so well that if I use the wrong colors, or the colors would not be relevant. And then I also realized that when it comes to visual communication, what you write about or what you draw, if you did it very well, the message or the story will get across, and the other things that would normally would come in between or get in the way wouldn't. So drawing became one of the strongest things for me. And then I found out that there was a time in our evolution where people of African descent would normally not draw a human being in reality, like how a portrait is done, where you capture the likeness. There was always, there had to be a stylization. And the stylization was based on you honoring the spiritual essence of a person you were drawing. So if a person was a speaker, then you did something with the mouth to acknowledge that this person was a speaker. It was a hearer or a seer. Hence, our masks had stylization, basically to capture the spirit of the people who were honoring. The reason being that if you captured the true essence, it could also be used negatively. Like I don't want to use, normally in negative magic, I won't say black magic, negative magic, yes. But in the process, our people developed a style of expression which is phenomenal, because you look at our carvings, look at our textile designs, how we stylize the human form. It's beautiful. But then, when the Europeans came, they made our stylization look like it was demonic. Or they tried to prevent us or discourage us from portraying or expressing ourselves the way we normally do. But fortunately, we're still doing it. And what is considered as maybe traditional or traditional African art, which they marginalize, they realize that has a universal timelessness about it, because it will fit into, if you really know what you're about, it will fit into most of the surroundings and environments that demand art. But you don't see a lot of artwork, especially fine art, which is paintings, in the places that we should have our work in. The reason being, arts tell a story. And if you gave the people of African descent the freedom to tell their story, the lie that has been told to us for 500 years will be thrown overboard, because our people are just dying to tell their story. And so those of us who are here, when you get a chance to see art from different parts of the diaspora, open your eyes and your ears and your hearts and just look at and embrace the joy and the power in those expressions. Because it's like food in the air we breathe or in the things we see. Yes. And we should always make sure that we are encouraging our children to be part of this experience. Because they, when we are too old and can't see properly, will be our eyes. They will be our spokespeople, and we should ground them in a culture that they rightfully are part of and shouldn't be denied access to. Well, so I went back to college in Ghana, And my thing was to, first of all, master the craft. And once I mastered the craft, I realized that my function as a human being was to help in telling our story. And I realized that some of the stories that were rooted in our way of worship, like if it's Christianity, I look at the world and the works or the paintings that have survived the ages are what we call, let's say, religious art. Let me use the word religious art. The paintings in the Egyptian tombs. When you go to Southeast Asia, you see there are sculptures on their walls. There are Buddhas. I mean, you look at the exquisite expressions of all these people. Because those paintings were worshipping the Supreme Creator, they were done very well and they've endured. So, I figure if I borrowed from things that celebrated and honored our Supreme Creator, they would basically go and touch more people. So I picked themes from the Bible like be fruitful and multiply, and put images to it. It takes a village to raise a child. Everlasting, like this painting here. Everlasting came because I figure, or I feel that the blessings that were given, would always be for us. It came before we got here, and it will be here after we've gone. But it came from the heavens, so it is the sky, and it came from the earth we stand on. So I brought water from the sky, and since we are water beings, we've carried the waters of our ancestors up to us today. So the water flows from the past through our communities. And what I did was, I have symbolically determined to celebrate the wisdom of our ancestors in the way they built their houses. Because long ago, our ancestors realized that a circular house was the most ideal shape for a house, in the sense that if you were in a place where there are violent storms, the storm didn't have a direct wall to blow you away. The wind would go around it. And then the circular interior was a natural deterrent for pests and insects. There are no corners for them. So they get confused and they leave. And then thirdly, our people did not cook in our rooms. Our kitchens were outside. So the rooms or the huts we stayed in were the cleanest places. So when you hear the word a dirty African village, the person doesn't know what they're talking about. The village is cleaner than the city. Because in the village, everybody is their brother's keeper. I can't drink dirt and throw it to my neighbors. When I put food out for my children, my neighbor's children to eat. I mean, everybody knows is that thing. So I put the circular paintings, and then there's the light blue or the blue upper part of the painting that I use to celebrate the spiritual aspects of our lives. Then you come to the living, and it's our people with the hearts, the mass representing the ancestors who've come before us. And I use the elephant. The elephant, with this raised trunk, symbolizes good tidings. And the elephant is the animal that has been given the attribute of having a very good memory, because the elephant never forgets. When the British came to West Africa and tried to colonize Ghana, Ghana had more gold than any of the colonies they had. And our gold is the purest. So they minted a coin called a guinea. It's £1, 1 shilling. And the symbol they put on the guinea, one was the Queen, that was King George. And then the other side of the coin was the elephant and the palm tree, which was the symbol they gave to Ghana. But the elephant never forgets. The most powerful oath in our tribe is the oath that has to do with the elephant. We say the elephant never forgets. So the elephant is reminding us never to forget our past, never to forget our ancestors. What I did here was put a pot. Our ancestors in our travels carried water. We carried vessels that we put our vital things and needs in. So, in this pot, with a little steam coming out, are the ancestors, like genies coming out of the pot. But in the pot, there's the representation of Africa. So out of the pot are the blessings of Africa, which is our ancestors. And the elephant reminding us not to forget. So our blessings will be everlasting. As long as we live and we breathe air, we will not forget who we are. And continue this relay race of inspiring the next generation to excel in their endeavors. Then I come to Deja Vu. Our music has endured. If you look at the world today, I'll say 3/4 of the good music has its roots in the expressions of people of the diaspora. It's our beat, it's our everything that they're copying, and yet they don't acknowledge us. But then our blues, on our way here, we came past, I think, one of the hotels is having an outdoor concert. And then there are some Caucasians playing the blues in the hot afternoon. I said, wow. Have they experienced what inspired us to play the way we play? Or when we say the blues, that happy sadness, have they experienced it? But then, this is what the old people told that our Supreme Creator did for us. He knew that there will come a time when our way would be endangered. So to endure, he made our expressions so infectious that the people who came to colonize us would take it as theirs. And it just basically gave credence to a saying we have, that the best place or the safest place to keep something precious of yours is in the thief's pocket. Because the thief will steal and stash it until the rightful owner comes and picks it up. So our blues, our rock and roll, whatever gospel, they can take it. It's there. One day, when they get tired, we'll go and pick our thing and continue doing it better than it has ever been done. Because now we have the essence of triumph, which goes to something that Maya Angelou said that, or wrote and did, that really touches me. The caged bird song. The caged bird song is sweeter than the bird that is free. Because the bird that is free hasn't known captivity. But the caged bird has a concept of the freedom that they lost that adds a certain tone, which is rare to whatever the bird sings. And that is us. Our expressions have a certain uniqueness about it. In its purity, it's priceless. So come the blues. The string instrument, the guitar, is a physical representation of a marriage between the male and female reproductive organs, joined together by a string. That when we play, somebody who is good at playing basically talks at the emotional feelings of those who hear. So a string instrument player will bring peace and joy and contentment to those who listen. A classic example in the Bible is Saul and David. Saul was troubled, but it was David who would play his lyre to keep him calm. Yes. So this painting is an evolution of something that started 34 years ago when I started to paint. Because 34 years ago, I decided to take art as my profession. So I resigned my job as a medical illustrator and photographer in the University of Science and Technology to freelance as an artist. But what gave me the strength to do that was, about this time, 34 years ago, a music producer commissioned me to do 7 album covers for a project that he had. Real quick, around that time, reggae music had become a threat to the music establishment internationally, because reggae music was radicalizing people of the third world. So the leading music producers, Decca Records and all those people, figured that the way they could neutralize this threat was to pump money into African music and other places to come up with something that would drown out reggae. So some leading African music producers were given huge grants. And one such person was Faisal Helwani, a Ghanaian music producer who got this grant with the late fella, Ransom Kuti from Nigeria. And he came to me and said, "Look, Sami, I need these album covers within 2 months." And he paid good money. 2 of the jobs alone would take over my whole year's salary as a senior member of staff on the campus. So I took a year's leave without pay and decided I was going to do these album things. And once I finished, going back to do the medical illustration and that stuff didn't seem to be fun anymore. And I didn't look back. But it was music. Doing album covers for the music industry that started me as an artist. You know, my life as a full-time artist. And I did 7 album covers. And then not long afterwards, the music industry changed. They stopped using the 33 huge, the long plays, the LPs, and brought these little bitty CDs. How are you going to make money? I mean, doing this small stuff. We tried, so why don't they, like every musician who produces a CD should do a poster. People, it didn't work. I mean, they took money out of our mouths. You know, but now it's coming back. You know, the LPs are coming back. Yeah, so the music industry got me into art. And what I did was look for the imagery and things that would make our people long for our rich cultural past, our heritage. There's always been scenes from Ghana, scenes from Africa, because those are the themes that are dear to me. Now I have an American experience, which shows through my work. But then it not only shows through my work. Here in this country, I got exposed to very good quality materials that have given our work that sense of longevity and made it worth for someone to collect. So this is the expression of 34 years of growth, of meeting wonderful people, and then appreciating the power of spirit and the presence of something that is very benevolent for us, especially those of us whose heartfelt endeavors are rooted in enlightening our people through the services that we do, whether it's being healers, servers, cooks, painters, musicians. Let's always excel in those endeavors, because there's nothing more uplifting to do than that. Thank you all. Are there any questions? Yes,
These 2 paintings don't reflect it, but many of your paintings are done in shades of gray. Is there a reason for that?
It's I had to come from a source to work in color, like the bright reds and the yellows and blue. It's I don't have control over that. They come and go. So I have paintings that are colorful. Some I started, this is my 30th year. There are some that are about as old as 30 years being here in America. I do a little at a time, and when the feeling leaves, I let it go. But the grays, the what do you call the monochromatic colors, basically working off black and white. And then the grays are the mixture of course, the harmony between the black and white. But then I've used gold and silver symbolically because those are the two precious metals mentioned in the Bible. And in our culture, we know gold is imperishable. Gold is forever. So when there's something that is spiritually very important, I would paint in gold so that at least I'm honoring the longevity of the subject. Now, blue is a color that uplifts me. For some reason, I've never been able to explain it. But the closest is that the widest expanse of vision that I had was the sea. And my family house, there's no building between my house and the sea, except about a stretch of land which is about 200 yards. So we got to see the sky and the horizon, and its pacifying effect that gives me a chance to take people far back. So I work out of the blues and the things that are muted. But come and catch me after I've eaten some hot pepper. And then the colors will show through.
You said you started through music, through the musician. So did you have any talents with art before that point?
I've always drawn. I've always drawn as a child. And the drawing was very therapeutic, for me. Then I happened to be one of those people who always saw things that when I tried to share, they branded me as a fibber or somebody with a very phenomenal sense of imagination. Then came the camera. Because once I got the camera, I had a camera with me all the time. And I know in my archives and in certain places are phenomenal photographs of being in the right place at the right time and capturing things that people don't normally see. But the ability to, I felt I needed to draw, okay, so this is what I saw. Because if I saw it and I can draw it, it will give you an idea better than me trying to describe what it is that I saw. So fortunately now we've got a camera. And sooner or later they're going to make someone will come out with an application that you put to your eye and it will start photographing. Yes. Yes.
Did your parents encourage you with your art?
With
To
a lot
start
of,
when you started?
initially, not openly. My father, earlier I mentioned the fact that he would go and brag about my drawings to his friends, but never in front of me. Never in front of me. It was only later that I realized their fear was how can you make money of what they considered as a hobby? You're just drawing. But then, when I got old, I'll challenge them and say, okay, you think this, here's a piece of paper and pen, draw something. Oh, I can't draw. Oh, I can't do this. But then they would be very critical about what you're doing. An old man gave me the solution to this problem. He commissioned us to do the interior decoration for his discotheque in Kumasi. And he employed us students from the university to go and work. And people in Ghana had this mentality that the university students were useless people, the government was wasting money on us. All we do was just drinking and wasting. Oh yes, a lot of people go, university was useless. So here we were working on his walls. and some of his friends came. Are these the boys who are working on? So, oh yeah, well, these useless tech people. Then the owner said, hey, you say they're useless. If I gave you a brush right now and told you, see this wall, go and paint something, can you? And each other guy says, okay. He said, no, I can't. I said, so you see, they've been bold enough to take paint. This white wall, when you came, it was white. Look at what they've done. Isn't it beautiful? Can you do it? He says, until we draw people's attention to this thing that seems easy. It's easy, it seems easy, because really it is, but each person has to find themselves. We write very well, right? Most people say they can't draw, but they've got the best handwriting. Writing is the drawing of letters, the ABCs. So when you learn how to write your ABCs very well, you're writing, but you're actually drawing the letters. So there's a school of thought now. We want to start the children from not just writing ABCs as children. We get them to draw the human form as children. Because when you start learning how to draw the human being proportionally and properly, you least likely want to go and hurt a human being, because you've been drawing people, the hands, the face is beautiful. You're not going to draw someone with a black eye, you know. So there's a psychological thing that now that we've realized, we want to implement that in changing, because our world has lent itself towards violence. But if we get people to appreciate this beautiful thing that the Creator has made, we human beings, and the life around us, the plants, the birds, and all that type of stuff, learn to draw. When you draw something very beautifully, you fall in love with the thing. Why do you now want to go and kill the beautiful bird that you just finished drawing? Yes. So that is it. Okay.
Well, thank you, Sammy. In the interest of time. Sorry, husband has a question.
I just have one question.
Okay.
Understanding that Kwame Nkrumah was the first president after colonization, did he have an impact on the art world and on you in any way?
Oh yes, Nkrumah had Kofi Antubam, who was a leading Ghanaian artist. He is responsible for designing all the state symbols, the swords, and the first mural on any wall in Ghana. It's actually still in existence on the wall of the community center opposite our Parliament House. It's a painting, mural based on Psalm 133. Oh, how pleasant it is that men dwell together in harmony. Yes. And it was one of the murals I drove past as a child always. Little did I know that I was going to end up in the school where he was teaching. Now, Kofi Antubam was Nkrumah. He made, and Nkrumah really supported the arts. But Kofi Antubam, the late Kofi Antubam, was the most strictest art teacher, because the art school was more serious than a maths class. No laughter, and he beat us. If you made a mistake and you drew an African with European features, you got beaten. He said, "Is your father's nose pointed?" Like you go and draw European stuff, you'll be in trouble. So he forced us to have a sense of African way back then. Yes. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Most of y'all know me. My name is Howard Berry. Actually, I should clarify. My full name is Matthew Howard Berry. I have 3 first names. I do all my art under the name Howard Berry because at one point in time I used to do writing and reviews and different things like that, and I did everything underneath the name Matthew. And once I started doing the art, to help myself and to keep things separated, I would do everything underneath Howard. That way if somebody addressed me as Howard, I knew they were talking about my art and not my writing or anything else. So a lot of my family members, they're talking to me about this guy named Howard, and they have no clue that it's me. It's the same guy, that I'm the guy who does the art. First, I want to thank Pat and Solomon for inviting me and always including me. I'm always honored and privileged, especially when I look at the quality of the art and the other artists who've been participating in these type of events. I've been attending a couple of the gallery talks and listened to all the different artists speak and say, you know, what got them into art and their techniques and learning different things. And it's been an eye-opener for me because sometimes I have this tendency to think I'm by myself. You know, it happens a lot. And I know I'm not the only one. We all, I think, suffer from a term, I think it used to be before called terminal uniqueness. We all think we're the only ones. We're the only ones who go through something. We're the only ones who see things a certain way. And these have been eye-opening for me because at each point somebody touches on something that shows me I'm not disconnected, that I am still a part of this picture. And I kind of feel myself fortunate and blessed to hear Sami and let him go before me because everything he was saying was making sense. And I was trying to explain stuff to my wife when we were on our way here. And I think I'm getting ahead of myself because for those of you who have been around me for a minute, you probably heard us mention that I have a brain injury. And I think I'll backtrack a little bit and tell you about that. I was stationed in the military, and one day I was on my way home from work, and on that particular day I was riding my bike, and on that day I decided I was going to be safe. Now, normally I don't think nothing about it. I get on my bike, I ride home. I had an hour and 20 minutes for lunch, so I would ride my bike home, eat lunch. My son was little at the time, and I had an older daughter, and I would, you know, if the kids were home, I would spend time with the kids, play around with the wife, and then get back on my bike and ride back to work. On this particular day, I remember thinking to myself, I'm going to be safe, and I was riding my bike home, and I rode on the sidewalk, you know, facing traffic so I could see the cars coming. And on that day, some guy, mad at the military, comes flying around the corner in his car and hit me and ran over me and left me for dead. And as a result, I broke my arm, damaged my back in several places, but the massive amount that he did, it smashed my face. It broke my jaw clean up the middle and broke it from the hinge up here and different places and scraped the skin off my face. So when the military was dealing with me, they went for the obvious thing, you know, took care of the broken arm, tried to repair my face as much as they could, ended up getting a plate in my chin and different things. And in all my rehabilitating, nobody stopped to see if any damage happened to my brain. And even for me, with all the physical things I had to overcome, I knew there were things that were wrong, but it never crossed my mind that I had a brain injury. I just knew I would consider it like being off. And so for months I had my arm, you know, where I couldn't use it, and I wasn't able to talk because my mouth was wired shut. So when those wires came off and those casts came off my arm, I couldn't write anymore. I had been learning how to write with my left hand, and I had to relearn how to write with my right hand. So it never dawned on me brain injury. I just thought I couldn't use my arm for months, and so it was brain injury. When the wires came off my mouth, I couldn't talk. I had to relearn how to talk again. And it never dawned on me brain injury. I just thought, hey, I spent 2.5 months with my mouth wired shut. Now I gotta learn how to talk again. And I said all that to say it took them 20 years to acknowledge, the military to acknowledge that I had a brain injury. So all that time in that space of 20 years, it was me feeling broken and out of place and trying to find different ways to get back to normal and fighting all the physical challenges and things to find some kind of way for me to just get back to normal. And it never dawned on me that I was working against my brain at that time. And when they finally acknowledged that I had a brain injury, everything started making sense for me. Now I said all that because I wanted to show you that during that long process of me having this brain injury and me working, I would draw and do things for myself. Nobody saw them. If anybody, my wife got to see them, but nobody saw them. I would keep these journals and I would have pieces of paper where I would start on it one day and I would just put colors on it and put different things on it, or I would doodle something on it. I would just do something, but my intention was never to paint a picture or do any of those other things. It was just, it would help me calm down and it would help me, you know, focus and try to center my thoughts. And so never did I think, okay, I'm going to be having an exhibition or I'm going to, show this to anybody. Nobody was supposed to see these. And some of those pictures would just go through this process where I would paint it one day and then I would totally destroy it. I'd take it to the sink and wash all of it out. I would just do crazy stuff to it. Because in my brain, it was just me relaxing. It was just me doing things. But over the course of time, those images that I kept, where I would keep on drawing a line here and doing something here, they started turning into pieces. Now, meanwhile, I was still trying to get back into real life. So I did regular careers. I worked as a banker after I got out the military, because when I discovered that once I got out the military, when I first got out, I was being honest, because that's what you're supposed to do. So when I would tell people about my injuries and stuff, in the fields that I was going to work in administration and higher levels of record keeping and those kind of things where I was controlling people's businesses, they would look at me and see my injuries and they would see that as a liability. So a lot of them would say, well, if we take you on, well, they wouldn't be honest. They would just say you're overqualified. They would tell me things like that. So I ended up lowering my standards and just getting whatever job I can get. So long story short, during my time of working in all those things and doing all those different stuff, I would still be slaving away, playing with these little drawings and doing these little things and stuff. And so it came to where I ended up back in St. Louis here. And my career at that time was I thought I was going to do real estate. That was my plan. I was like going to be this real estate property manager, and I had all these plans laid out to where it would work for me, to where when I physically, because of the injuries that I had, when I couldn't work, I would have property that would be making money for me. That was my plan. But I ended up getting sick because of those physical injuries and spent some time in the hospital. And by the time I came back out, I was 3 credits away from my degree in real estate property management. By the time I recovered from my injuries and came back, housing market was up. It was just bust. And so I ended up sitting back in my counselor's office trying to figure out what I was going to do for school. And on my list, artist was not one of those things. So I was going back to those things to where I could capitalize on all these skills I had of working in personnel and working in finance and doing fraud management, all these things. I was trying to figure out how I could put all these together. And I'll say by the grace of God, one of those drawings that I played with every day fell out. I don't know how it got in there in my paperwork, but it fell out on the counselor's desk. And she saw it, she picked it up, and she looked at it and she was like, "You did this?" And I started apologizing because nobody was supposed to see these. I took it and I took it back and said, "Oh, I'm sorry, that wasn't supposed to be in there." She was like, "No, put that back." And she looked at it and she said, "You did this?" And I said, "Yes, I did." She said, "You have more of this?" And I said, "I do, but nobody is supposed, it's not stuff I want to show to people." And she looked at it and she said, "I could be wrong. I'm not an art critic. I don't know anything about art. But I know if you got more stuff like this, I think you're doing the wrong thing." And so she spent maybe the next 20 minutes trying to convince me that I was doing the wrong thing. She said, "Look, don't take my word for it. This is what I want you to do. I want you to gather up some of these things that you have. I'm going to give you the names of the art directors around here." So she gave me the head of Webster's art program, St. Louis, Merrimack, Lindenwood, everybody who has an art program out here in this region. She gave me their contact information. She said, "I want you to get copies of these pictures, and I want you to send it to them and just ask them point blank, say, do you think I have what it takes for an art career?" And long story short, I sent those out just so I could humor her, because I was pretty sure they was going to write back and say, stick to your other careers. But they didn't. Every last one of them wrote back and said, "Yes, you should be pursuing art." And so even with all that, and even with them saying that, I kind of compromised. I decided to go to school for graphic design because it was safe. It wasn't fine art. It wasn't me painting. So it was that safe zone. But in that process of doing it, I discovered that, I keep saying that term to people, like art became a therapy, but I discovered art began to become this thing that helped me more with my brain injury than any of the medicine that they had been giving me or any of these other rigid, routines they would have me doing. Art began to be this thing that gave me a voice. And so I'll say it like this, the best way I could describe the brain injury is imagine your brain on all the time and saying like flashcards, like going real fast, like, you know, food, this, and it's going so fast enough for you to see them, but not fast enough for you to grab a hold of them and then do something with them. And that's what it was like. It was just like my brain was going non-stop, and it was exhausting. And so when I began to do the art, it began to allow me to focus on some of those ideas and grab a hold of them and then do something with them, and then begin to produce stuff in a way that once I put it down on something, I was done with that thought, and it gave me that little bitty moment of peace and release. And so before I knew it, I was just cranking out pictures and just doing things over and over again. So the reason why I bought the stuff that I bought with me today was I didn't want to so much focus on polished pieces of art, because most of the time people look at polished pieces of art and they're missing the story behind it. What they're doing is they're kind of measuring the technique, they're trying to see what they use, and sometimes they miss the story. So I knew I wanted to tell you about my brain injury, and I wanted to give you that foundation of my brain firing at 100 miles an hour and all these thoughts, and then show you the pieces so that when you look at my pieces, that you start seeing like, oh wait, there's more to it than this. It's not just a picture of this singer, it's not just a picture of this person, it's more to it. So I wanted to start with the newspaper piece. A lot of people got their introduction to me through Ferguson. And that was when I began doing this series of work of covering the whole incident, from the death of Mike Brown to the protesters and how they responded to the police, how they responded to the protesters, and how this whole thing was going about. And I was doing the images in a journal, but I wasn't getting that same sense of release that I was talking about, how, you know, like something had been done. So what I began to do with those pieces, I began to put them down on newspaper. So flash forward to now, when January we were working on Two Hill for the dancers and stuff. And so during that time frame, I was keeping that same process going. We were working on dancers. Some former dancers, Alicia Grafmack and Kervin and Antonio, who used to dance for Alvin and Ailey, came back to St. Louis, and they got together with Dance St. Louis, and they were doing this program centered around Ferguson and other issues addressing the Black community and stuff, and they did this awesome performance, which became, I think, a bit more heightened because they invited 16 artists to participate in it, and the work that went with it, I think, stole the show. And I'm not talking about mine. I like Sammy's work and Leonard's work and Kababi, all the different artists who participated in it. So while I was working on the bigger pieces for that show, I was still grabbing the newspaper and still putting these pieces out. And so this is an example of, while I was trying to concentrate on the whole dance theme and the whole concept of, we had to do 2 images. And I knew I wanted to tie it all into Ferguson and how I did that social justice in that field, but I wanted to do more than just put the protesters on it, because we had seen that. And when I first began the first piece, which is in coffee, and I'll get to those in a second, I was juggling a coffee piece and a newspaper piece. You know, one was 6 feet tall, and I was trying to make it mimic and look like these, like a page from the newspaper. But when I began working on them, and I was looking for a different concept other than the protesters, the whole dance thing kind of struck me, because out of all the things that have happened to us as a people, the one thing that it hasn't dampened is our spirit of expression, and how we can still dance and sing and make some of the most joyous sounds when we are under the most heaviest, painful, experiences. And there's a beauty in that. I mean, there's a pain in it and there's a beauty in that, and that's the kind of things that I'm drawn to. So in my work, I'm always drawn to the parts of where something is either, there's this joy and pain. This is another one from during the Two Hill time. it's that dance, that joy, that celebration, it's all that, it's all those pieces. And so it's not just, you know, she sang a good song or he played a mean guitar. It's the story behind it. So for me as an artist, I'm seeing something different than other people see. So like when I happen to have the pieces that fit in with the blues thing, because I have on my wall tons of pictures where I see the brokenness in that person or the pain in that person that made them make those joyous sounds, that made them play that guitar that way, that made them sing those notes the way they did it. I identify with that brokenness and that pain that they have. And so I'm constantly, you know, doing work in a way that's showing this. And so I want the pieces because I want to try to, in a small way, show you this disjointed way I think, but it's disjointed in a way it happens sometimes, but when you back up and you get a full picture, it's not necessarily disjointed. So while I was working on other pieces and different stuff, real life happens sometimes. So for some of us people who are into hip hop, Fight Dog, a member of Tribe Called Quest. For us hip hop heads and people who are into hip hop music, he was like a big deal. He was like, you know, an MC. Like a lot of people listen to music don't listen to what people are saying. But he's from that golden era where hip hop wasn't just saying a catchy phrase and a catchy hook to sell a record. They were actually saying stuff to make you think. And I learned a lot about the world outside of St. Louis, Missouri, from listening to artists and stuff like him. So in the middle of working on other projects, when I heard he died, in keeping with that whole grabbing the first thing, you know, I just grabbed that newspaper and I had to put something on it. Now, the way this works is when I'm doing these pieces, Pat and him have had the opportunity of being in my workspace, but I usually cover the spaces, cover the inches of my walls with these, or the work that I'm working on. They've been there and they've seen. On any given day, it's tons and tons of images, and usually with faces, and usually with brown faces looking back at me, and I call those my walls of accountability because I don't want to just be a guy who's doing pictures, who's doing cool art pieces, who's doing, you know, stuff solely because I want to end up on the wall of a gallery. I do stuff for me first. It starts with me first. I want to be held accountable about what I'm putting on a piece of paper. I want these faces looking at me saying there's more to this story than, you know, than demonstrating to people that I know how to use a pen or I know how to use charcoal and stuff. So this is another one of those images that if you were hanging in my space that you would see. And I'm showing these because I want to show that it's a matter of, how many of you knew Ida? You guys knew Ida. I had the pleasure of meeting her because of my connection since Hands Up, Don't Shoot. And I remember from meeting her that she had that presence about her and that look behind. When I looked at her and I seen her in her face and looked in her eyes, she had that old soul wisdom that she had seen stuff and she knew stuff and she could stand there and smile at you, but you still knew she was not the one to play with. And it was a pleasure being around her. So when I got news of her passing in the middle of even doing my own work, I still had to stop and do something and commemorate having had that, you know, that experience of meeting her. And I'm showing you guys all this because I want you to see that I do sometimes appear like I'm working arbitrarily, but I'm not. It's sometimes, so like my wife in the beginning, maybe flashback maybe 15, 20 years, she used to give me talks about being organized. And I got what she was saying. And we finally found this point where we've met where she understands that I look like I'm all over the place, but I'm not. But I do occasionally incorporate a little bit of organization to help me make sense of it so other people can make sense of it. And so one of the last newspaper ones I want to show you is, this is for all of you. I'm always looking, I'm always observing. I'm paying attention to everybody, and I'm not looking at them for the same reasons that they might think. I see stuff in people, and so I can honestly say that if you've talked to me more than once or twice, you know that I'm always looking. I'm paying attention to everybody, and I'm not looking at them for the same reasons that they might think. I see stuff in people, and so I can honestly say that if you've talked to me more than once or twice, you know that I'm always looking. you might be hanging on my wall. You might be hanging on my wall somewhere. So this one I've done recently. I did this after we did this show. How many of you know Shiraz? I did this one after at the Vaughn, when our pieces moved from Two Hill to the Vaughn, and she did this spoken word piece, and I had heard it before I heard it on the radio interview and stuff, but it was the circumstances of that day led up to a young man speaking who had been wrongfully incarcerated, and he talked just before she was supposed to do this piece called Pull This Wire, and his story lined up word for what she was talking about in that piece, and the energy and the emotion in that room was just, it was crazy. That day it was kind of like, and when Leonard did his talk, he started singing. He broke into this song about Save the Children, and all those pieces, nobody gave us an itinerary saying, Leonard sing this song. You know, there was no script, there was nothing, but the way those pieces fell in line that day, there was just this I don't know, I can't explain it. It was spiritual in its nature. And by the time she got up and began to do this piece, and even where she was at this point of breaking, when she did it, it just caught my attention, you know. And so I couldn't wait until the paper came out when they was talking about her, because she had that same weekend, she had where she did a live reading with the band of her pieces and stuff. So I was waiting for Thursday to come for these papers so that I could get this out and put this on there. And I can safely say that there's probably some of you in this room who I probably have pieces that have some of y'all on it. But I, you know, it's this whole, you know, where before I got into the art, the brain injury, I always saw it as a limitation. I always saw it as that thing that was holding me back. I always saw it as that thing that was keeping me from being 100% to getting back to what my life was like before that. But now looking back, it actually, I don't want to say a blessing, but it was a blessing, because this is what it did. It made me lose my confidence in my own ability and my own strength. It made me stop being so self-centered in a way that it's like when you get a new car, you get a red car, suddenly you notice every other red car on the road. You know, for me, that realization of being broken made me start seeing that in other people. But when I began to do the art, it also did the other thing. It also made me begin to see the creativity in other people and what other things people do, even those things that aren't readily celebrated by everybody else. So this was the newspaper side of things. And the point to this is that I work on whatever is close to me at the moment. That's how I started doing my art. And because what ends up happening is those ideals that are going by real fast, as I snatch them and grab them, I learned that the newspaper was always handy. It was always right there. You know, I always had those things right there, and I could do it right then without nobody telling me anything. So I'm going to pause for a second and tell you this. I spent most of 2016 doing commissions for people. And I learned that I don't like it. and I would tell you why. I would tell you why I don't like it. It's because the difference between these, when I do this, there is no thought process in this. You know, unless the only thing I start with is the person or the subject or the ideal. But aside from that, I don't give myself any expectations on what it's going to be. I don't say it has to look this way. I don't think about it. I just do it. And I'm fortunate every time somebody looks at one and they see where I was at and go, oh my God, I see this. Oh my God, I see this. I'm glad that they see that. But when I'm working, I don't care. You know, you can look at it and say, man, my sixth grader can do better than that. And I'd be okay with that. Because the process for me is that snatching that ideal, getting those materials and letting that thing get out of me, and then, you know, then I put it on my wall, and then I stand back and I look at it, and it's almost like a physical hard drive. Like I pulled that memory out of my brain, I put it on here, and I stuck it on my wall, and I can access it. And what happens is when I look at it, I see where I was at. So I see myself sitting in my studio. I remember what I was thinking that day. I probably can remember what I was eating that day when I look at this. I see it's my memories. These are my memories stuck on that. And so in the same line with that, when I'm not working with the newspaper pieces and those aren't on me, I usually start my day somewhere along the line. I work coffee into the day. And I started doing pieces in coffee purely by accident. I had a spot set up where I work where I had two matching cups. One cup with coffee that I used to drink from, and I had another cup that looked just like it that I kept water in. So when I did illustrations that were quick and it was supposed to be like pen and ink, I would keep this small cup of water there so I can clean my quills or clean my brushes in it. And it didn't have to be a lot of water because it was just for quick stuff. So one day I was working on these pieces of lions and tigers and stuff, and I was about to do a piece of a lion. And usually the first thing I do if I'm working with a quill, I'll do this wash with just the water, just the blank water, so that when I touch it with that quill or that brush, when that first ink hits it, it spreads and it goes just in the places where I put that water. Well, on this particular day, I dipped my brush in the wrong cup. I dipped my brush in the coffee cup and spread coffee all over this paper. And my first reaction was, oh man, I messed this up. And I was mad because the paper had been cut and it was already ready and it was supposed to fit with this series of other pieces I had done. And so I was mad, but not mad enough to crumple it up and throw it away. So I just pushed the paper to the side and went and worked on something else. I came back maybe an hour or two later, and the way the coffee had dried on this paper, it had this look to it. And I suddenly seen that lion in that coffee and stuff. So that was the start of me painting with coffee. I didn't bring the lion with me because it's now hanging on somebody else's wall. But what I brought with me is that I wanted to show, I mentioned before about sometimes my thought process looks like it's disjointed, but it really isn't. So while I was working on the two hill pieces, that main thing that kept coming up was the dance, you know, that whole dance thing. So when I began working with my coffee pieces too, that dance thing continued. And I'll pass these around if you guys want to be able to touch it and handle it. It was that whole dance, and not just any dance, it's that whole, our people, you know, that whole way we dance, the way we express ourselves, this way of joy. It's a celebration, you know. And while I was drinking my coffee, I just began to do these pieces too. And it all fit in with the two-hill one. If you've been to Vaughn Cultural Center and you've seen the pieces, that one even had local ties. That's Catherine Dunham, that classic shot that they caught of her doing that dance that she does. Now this one is even, let me put it together first. These two go together. And these two, I wanted to show how, what I usually end up doing when I keep, because I do a lot of pieces where I don't formalize them quickly, meaning I don't put frames on them right away, because they're still alive to me as long as they're not framed. I can still come back later and touch something and put something on it. And that's been the case with these. These have been sitting on my desk where I can get my hands on them, because every time I move them, it changes. You know, when they were together, you know, at first they were together, but I accidentally turned one, and then I began to notice that every time I turn them, they tell a different story. You know, every time I moved them in position to each other, there was a different relationship between these two dancers and how the way those coffee spreads and everything on it were. And a lot of how my work is, it goes that way. You know, and so, these two are best. I think so. But a lot of my work, that's how it is. It's just me, you know, rapidly trying to get ideas out. It's me using stuff that people normally wouldn't even consider for being used for art, you know. I say coffee sometimes and people just laugh at me, just really coffee. I'm serious, but then they see it and go, oh. And it really is, there's always the simple answer, which is I do it because I know not a lot of other people are doing it. I do it because it's quick to get my hands on. I do it because for every one of these, I get to have a cup of coffee. Sometimes the answers really are simple and you know, there's simpleness to it. But there's always, for me though, there's always this story. I say accountability, but it's this thing that I haven't seen a lot in my lifetime, and it's always, for me, a celebration of melanin. It's always celebrating brown skin and black people in a way, because there's a million stories and narratives coming out about us all the time that say we're less than, that say we're not as creative as we are. And I'm doing these images for myself to remind me that no, it's in our DNA. There's some greatness in our DNA. There's some things that we do that people can't even dream of doing, and we do it in spite of everything being taken away from us. And that's what I love. So the newspaper, the coffee, the fact that I've had pieces on a piece of newspaper hanging in a gallery somewhere, it's my own internal joke sometimes, because that's how we are as people sometimes. The value, they try to extract the value from us like we're just like a worthless piece of this, but our value goes far beyond that. It's far beyond that. And so that's why I like working on things like that. So the last two pieces I'll show you is that I mentioned the disjointed thing. I'm all over the place. But it's always still about the, this one is wood burning. That particular piece is wood burning. And it's Bob Marley. Yeah. That's because I'm also secretly a pyromaniac. I love fire. I said that in public. I said that in public, but that particular piece is wood burning. And I showed you these pieces because if you haven't had the opportunity to step inside my workplace, I could try to explain it to you and say that I have it set up to where every couple of steps I take, it works with my brain injury. So my brain injury, all those random thoughts I mentioned to you guys in the beginning about me trying to grab them, sometimes it literally is like, oh, what about this? What about this? What about this? Now in other careers that would get me in trouble, because you have to stick with thoughts and stay with them. So I've been fortunate enough, and I've been blessed to have a wife who worked with me until I got to some kind of point of making sense. But I have every couple steps where in one spot, I'm doing those coffee pieces. Take a couple steps this way, I'm working on my computer doing pieces there. Take a couple steps this way, I'm playing around with the newspaper, making a mess over here. I walk to the other side of the room, that's where I'm painting, I'm doing something else. So I've been fortunate enough to finally figure out the brain injury in a way to where I'm bouncing all over the place and it looks like it. But for the person who stands up and scans the room and you see the newspaper dancers, the coffee dancers, you see the pictures of dancers, like at Vaughn right now, the big giant coffee ones that I did there, you see all these pieces together and then you start seeing the picture going, oh, okay. He's not as scatterbrained as he's coming across. He really has a bigger picture that he's working on. And so the last thing I'll tell you about is the Miles one. I'll tell you about that one real quick because that one happens to be in the exhibit along with those three on the wall. The Miles one is the perfect example of what me and my interaction with my work. My work is, I say words like therapy and, but my work is constantly teaching me. When I was working on this Miles piece, if you can't read the words back there, it's just a short sentence. It says, "Do not fear the mistakes, there are none." And that was a quote by Miles Davis. The whole time I was working on this piece, I don't know how many times I either wrote, drew, paint, or typed that phrase, "There are no mistakes." I still was like 4 or 5 hours, 6 hours later, still messing with that piece. And then I was painting one section on his face there, and then the sentence finally clicked. There are no mistakes. And then I finally relaxed and just finished it up and got it done. But prior to that whole time those words were in my face saying, "Do not fear the mistakes, there are no mistakes." But that is one of the biggest limitations and the biggest obstacles in doing work is when I get outside of my head and I'm worried about, oh, are they gonna like it? Oh, is it going to fit in with this? Is it going to fit in with everybody else's pieces? But then it takes me out of my work. And that piece, that whole process of layering those words, it took forever. It took a bunch of layers for it to finally get in through this brain of mine that, you know, it's not about being fearful and apprehensive. It's just embracing and trusting the gift that's in me and then letting come out what needs to come out and let the pieces speak for themselves after they're done. So with all that rambling said, that's it. If you got any questions, I can answer your questions. Yes.
I want to add or acknowledge something you said.
Okay.
Our excellent rendition of the things that have moved us to be creative has been made very possible because of the wonderful women in our lives.
Yes.
And the children it's been a very supportive environment that has allowed us to be creatively off kilter.
Yes.
I mean, if that's the word to use.
Yes.
You know. And I really makes me appreciate the expressions of other artists because you don't know what they have to go through to come up with the expressions.
Yes.
I mean, we are the people who work in public. Sometimes the public is not friendly.
Right.
Somebody will not like what you're doing. What is this horrible color? And then you are in a totally different zone and you don't get personal. So the fact that what we're doing has come out well is a blessing in itself.
Yes.
It has a joy and the triumph of our expression.
Yes. And yes.
I like to also tell you that I produced the video for Frida for the project. And while I was producing the video, I broke up different images. And your image was one that when I broke it in sections, I put it together just like you just did. Not even knowing that you were doing it. And it was just so uplifting because I saw it and I felt it. And I was turning the images and making it, expanding the video of your work. And that's exactly what I did.
And it was funny because after Frida got the pictures and the video back, I think she sent me a message on Facebook like 3 in the morning because she had them in her possession the whole time. And the chart, the graphite one, the black and white one that's on the cover of the catalog, it didn't dawn on her until she got those pictures back and the video and was watching the individual sections. She didn't see the protesters going across the whole bottom of the thing. She didn't see any of that, you know, and I kind of got packed the same way. I had a 4-panel Ferguson piece that was hanging on this wall up here. And individually, they each looked like 4 standalone pieces. But when you back up in the right distance and look at it, you saw that there was a police on the first panel and a protester on the 4th panel, and they both were facing inward. And then in the middle of the 2 panels, when they were together, there was Mike Brown's face, where he was looking back, but it was kind of made up of different protesters who were standing there screaming. And then across the whole bottom, it was like the other piece, it was just police cars and protesters, just a whole lineup that covered all 4 of those panels. And so, yeah, I think that way sometimes, and I've just been fortunate enough to where some of what I see, I'm able to get it down on something physical that people can look at and kind of get a glimpse of what's going on inside my head, you know, all the time with all these pieces. But yeah, on your note, what you were saying, Sami, yeah, when I did my first show at Vaughn, I made sure before I even started, I told everybody that if it wasn't for my wife, you wouldn't be seeing none of this art. Because even with the Ferguson pieces, they were calling me, they were asking me, and it was like, no, that is my journal. Because it was like, you know, I shared a few on Facebook, but that was as far as I expected it to go. I didn't want anybody, because this, like everybody, you know, to them this is newspaper, but like I said, this was, you know, that was my memories, that was my emotions, that was where I was at that time, and they were still sacred to me. So, you know, with her, patient, loving, prodding, you know, she let me know that, it's other people need to see this. It's not just about your journal. You know, there's other people need to see it, even from the sense of younger people seeing it and knowing that there are other outlets for you instead of just being out there being a target for them to shoot at you. You know, even for the protesters, and then it began to click for me. You know, so yes, I consider myself blessed and fortunate that I had somebody who's given me that room to explore my creative nature and to be able to stand here in front of you guys and share it with you. Yes.
When you were down after the accident, were you very angry?
Oh my God, yes. And for a lot of reasons, because it's one thing to say that you're dealing with a broken arm. Now imagine dealing with the pain that comes from a broken arm, and the way my arm is broken, it was broken on the radial head. So think about everything you do with your hand, and this simple little motion like this, I could not do this motion. And every little thing I did caused me pain. And then there was this whole thing that I did where, when my mouth was wired shut, I was imagining all the good stuff I was going to eat when those wires came out. And when the wires came off, I could not open my mouth. I had not used those muscles, and plus this part had broke. So the way the doctors decided to fix it was, the jaw broke off the hinge here, but it also split straight through the middle here. So one piece was hanging here, one piece was hanging here. And the jaw was broke on this side. They was like, we can set one side, but to do the other one, we'd have to do surgery. So that pain of all that, so combined having a brain injury, the pain from my face being broken, the pain from my arm being broken, several discs in my back being, messed up, it was waking up every day in pain. And then the realization that I couldn't keep up with everybody. So while I was in the military, I was angry all the time. Because everybody I trained ended up becoming my bosses, because my injuries kept me from going higher than I had made it. Because you have to go back to like leadership training and stuff. So there was this anger, there was this pain all the time, And then when I got out the military, the VA's answer to everything was to keep me drugged. So the drugs was either numb me and don't feel nothing at all, and be worthless, or try to find some kind of way of balancing this. And so I will say this, Ferguson, those pieces I did for Ferguson, that was the first time that I actually started making major strides in dealing with the anger thing, because that was the first time that I got to dump everything out in the piece. Because doing graphic design, everything is all about communicating the client's wishes. So whatever it is that they're trying to communicate to people, it's me facilitating what they want. But when Ferguson came along and I was doing those pieces, that was the first time I could be mad, excuse my language, mad as hell and just go to work, But I'm glad you asked me that, because that just triggered something that I think is a key thing. When I was working on these newspaper pieces, and especially the Ferguson pieces, and I was so angry and so mad, I was grabbing that charcoal and I was attacking those pieces, and I was, hitting, yeah, those are some of them right there. I was hitting those pieces with that charcoal.
Use the ledge.
And,
Put them on the ledge.
and it was tearing the newspaper. I was trying to hit it with my pencil or something like that, and the paper would rip. And then I tried it with ink, and then the ink would make it soft, and it would just fall apart. And so what it ended up becoming is, it became a lesson for me that how can I still be mad and still get these images on this newspaper, because the newspaper ain't gonna let me just beat them up. And I had to find some kind of way of getting and sneaking on, I call it sneaking, but sneaking on that newspaper and getting those same painful, angry images on them, to where when a person seen them, they felt the emotion I felt when I did those pieces and stuff. So it made me, it gave me a release for the anger, but it also helped me grow up a whole lot, because it was like, I would watch the news and see the protesters, and the protesters are out there, and the protesters are angry, and the police are angry. But with both of them angry, the protesters still would lose, because the police would still arrest them and throw them in jail. And for all that they were out there doing, the media would take that message and wouldn't say, look how passionate these people are about their rights and about seeing someone who looks like them dying. That's not how they present it. It's like, look at all these angry, mean black people out here causing trouble, tearing up stuff, And that's how they saw it. But with these, I got to tell the truth. I got to say, no, these are hurt people. I recognize that pain. I've been in pain, and I've seen those faces, and I know that expression and stuff. And so, yeah, I'm glad you asked that question. My long rambling unanswered, but yes, the anger and the pain, it was definitely there, And even now, I'm heavily into doing pieces and producing pieces because it's kind of becoming my Zen thing. It kind of gives me an outlet for it. I still have to deal with the fallout from those injuries that I had, you know. But now I got an outlet. So now I get to just go in there, and instead of taking it out on people and breaking stuff around the house, I've got something to dump it all into, you know. So yes. Yes.
I'm coming from a different direction.
Okay.
On your use of newspaper and the way newspaper has been used in our culture traditionally, especially in the South, newspaper is used as wallpaper to decorate the interior space. Also, newspaper is used for rugs and things like that, you know, because of accessibility and of course cost. You know, it's what's called make do.
Right.
You know, you make you do with what you have.
Right.
So this is the most access, most make do. And in doing that, you sort of continue the thread of the culture and using newspaper in that way.
And it's funny because they always use that term, happy accidents.
Right.
I've happily and accidentally stumbled into doing some things that had I took the forethought and did it, that could be like prolific.
Right.
You know, in the sense that I talk about doing the pieces to celebrate, you know, melanin and brown people and black people and how we aren't the way we've been, you know, portrayed in the media and film and everything, you know, that there is a greatness to us. And I stumbled onto that whole sense like soul food. You know, you take the best parts of everything, the produce and the animal and stuff away from us, and we still manage to take oxtails and different things and still turn it into something lovely, you know, and unintentionally, and so that's for me, that's the beauty. When I let go, and this is how it fits in with some of what you were saying, Sami, when I let go and I just start doing this, I get on the internet and I see some of the people in Africa and the stuff they're doing, and I'm like, I never knew them, and we have never talked, but I see them making some of the same lines and the same movements and doing some of the same things, you know, seeing these young brothers out there getting the pigment from the dirt and stuff and painting these pictures and doing stuff with nothing, you know, they go find nothing and turn it into something, and it's if we get out of our own way and let what's wrote on our DNA just do its thing, we do awesome stuff. And so that's why I feel like Frida was defending me one day because somebody referred to me as an emerging artist. She was like, oh no, he's emerged, right? But I thought about it afterward and I was like, no, I think I'm still in this birthing phase, because all these pieces of stuff I've done up to now, I feel like I've been whispering, because I have yet to say, you know, I touch on social justice and all those things because they're things that are what's affecting me at that moment, and I'm just letting it out. But I have yet to really just say, this is where I'm going, and I got something to say, and whatever comes out of these paints, this is what I'm going to say. So I haven't got to that shouting phase of my artistry, but it's coming.
Yeah, just one more question.
Okay.
From me anyway. Do you have a vision of a masterpiece?
You know, I do. It's hard to explain. That's one of the reasons why I put everything on my wall. Me and Sami were kind of touched a little bit on this right before we started, where it's sometimes, you know, yeah, I have to say some stuff for another time, but yeah, I have this, you know, this bigger, I call it a narrative, this bigger narrative. So all these pieces by themselves, you know, they can stand alone by themselves. But if you pull probably anything you've seen me do and anything that I presented and put them together, it's like one big giant puzzle. All of them will go together. Like these three, I can tell you for sure, like these three on the wall right here, I have pieces at home still that when they were on the wall, if you saw them together, you would know that they were all done at the same time. They all belong to each other because the lines intersect. They go from one picture to the next picture and stuff. And so there is this bigger picture that I'm working on. You know, that's one of the advantages of a brain injury. It's so much going on in there that I can see that picture, sometimes I try to explain to my wife, and she just be like, "You got it." Like, you got it, you know, because it's hard to explain it. But yes, I do have a masterpiece. It's constantly being worked on.
Okay.
If I could make a comment too, something you guys may not know about Edith and Howard Barrett is that they're motivational speakers. We had a group of boys in here from St. Paul Saturdays, I think it was last year, and we asked Howard to speak because they wanted to talk to the artists that did paintings in the newspaper, because it's a lot of emotion wrapped up in that. I didn't know the entire background, that they are really motivational speakers, but what surprised me is that Madam Edith over here literally calmed 2 or 3 of the young men, and Howard motivated these young men farther than I had ever imagined. So anyway, I really appreciated that and wanted to share that. They homeschooled their children, so that's the other side of Howard and the other side of Edith that I just wanted to share. They are phenomenal couple.
That's the stuff that grounded me. So all those things we talked about, like the pain and the anger and all that stuff, are the way that I found around the brain injury was I always needed something bigger than me. So the motivational speaking came about as my brother was my brother-in-law was teaching a Sunday school class. And when it comes to kids, he was a winner because he was afraid to discipline the kids and stuff. So he watched me and my wife with our kids. He would say, "Hey, can you just come and hang out in the back of the class? And the kids are bad, you know, help me out." Well, me and my wife ended up becoming the teachers, which led to me ended up becoming a youth pastor. And the man I worked under was a motivational speaker. And he had a crew of people that he was grooming to teach, you know, to be motivational speakers. And one of the guys didn't really have the confidence to do it. And so he went into this school. They sent him in this school. It was called People Skills Academy. And this is where the bad kids, when you get kicked out of school, is where they send you. And he was scared to death. And at the time, you know, I was still trying to recover from the injuries and stuff, so I stayed in the gym. I was always in pain, but I figured I didn't want to look like I had injuries or any of that stuff, so I stayed in the gym. So he wanted me to go because I was a big guy, and he was like, "They won't do anything if you're standing next to me." So I went with him to this school, and he was so nervous and so scared that he was trying to get himself together. And so while he was trying to get himself together, I got up and I talked to the kids. And it was a fit. I just talked to him from the heart. I told him the story about when I was in the military before the accident. I was into physical fitness. You know, I was full of myself. That's what I would say. I'll leave it at that. And I saw, you know, how much I can lift, how many push-ups I can do, all that stuff. But the military kind of breeds that in you, you know, stay fit. But this young guy showed up from Louisiana. His name was Edward Jenkins, and he was really fast. He could run a mile in less than 3 minutes without sweating. I mean, he didn't think anything of it. He would just run. And so when he had just showed up, we would, for the first time, it was the first Friday of the month, and we would do these 7-mile runs, and that ended with this run up this long, giant hill. It was Jenkins' first time running this run, so he didn't know where to go. So by default, he had to stay with us slow people until he learned what the route was. And my boss, we didn't get along very well. And if he would ever beat me in anything physical, at work I would have to hear it all day. So my motivation in every physical event was just don't let him beat me. You know, don't matter what happens, don't let him beat me. So we were doing this run. We got to the last part of it where the last part is just this real steep hill. You got to run up this hill that's maybe like less than half a mile, then you're home free. Well, Jenkins stayed with us till we got to that hill. Once he knew that that was the last spot, he took off. He was gone. Didn't see him no more. So it was me and 2 other co-workers and my boss. My boss had got a little bit ahead of me, and I was like, I don't care what I got to do. I don't care if I die. I am beating him. So I took everything I had, and I just took off running. I ran with everything in me. Now I could hear him behind me like stomping and breathing heavy. So that was my gauge. I would just listen for his footsteps, and if they got close, I ran harder. and I would wait till he got a little bit behind me. So it got to one point on the hill, I just took off, and I didn't hear him breathing no more, and I got happy. My heart was beating in my chest like I was gonna die, but I was happy because I wasn't gonna have to hear him for the rest of the day. I made it to the top of this hill, took that left to go home, and then all of a sudden I heard his footsteps behind me, and they were coming fast, and so I just started running fast. And the faster I went, the faster he went. I started going faster, then he started going faster, and I could hear him. He wasn't breathing though, so I was like, he done got a second wind, and he is not gonna let me have this. And so he started stomping harder, I started stomping harder. We were almost to the finish line, and then out the corner of my eye, I see somebody pass me, and it's Jenkins. And he just goes, whizzing by me, going, hey, what's up, man? And then he just takes off. I'm about to die here, so I finally make it to the line. I get up there, I collapse on the ground, and Jenkins just standing there smiling, goes get some water. He's sitting there drinking the water, going, that was a good run, I like that. Here comes the rest of my people a couple minutes later, right? And it was like, man, what you have this morning? I was like, what you mean? It was like, what in your right mind made you think that you can outrun Jenkins? It was like, we were back at the top of the hill watching you trying to beat him to the finish line. And I was like, I didn't know it was Jenkins. I thought it was my boss behind me. So I told the kids that story, and my point to them was saying, whatever is going on up in here is what's going to order your steps. If you think you can do it, you can do it. I knew I could beat my boss. And as long as I thought that was him behind me, I was running like it. I didn't care what my body said. It was not going to stop me. I was going to beat him. And so from that point on, we ended up being, motivational speakers. And I was going into the schools and talking to the kids. And years would go by, and I would see some of them who said, man, I heard what you said, and this is what I'm doing now and stuff. So I always needed something bigger than me, even then, before I was doing the art. And so now the art is that thing. It's that thing that I keep ahead of me. So that's why I keep the pictures on the wall for the accountability. It's that keeping something bigger than me, because it keeps my mind off of wallowing in the fact that I wake up in pain, or I have to deal with the brain injury, all that stuff. So it centers me and it grounds me, and it keeps me humble. I'll say it that way. So yes.
Thank you for sharing. And now, that was a great story. And we've heard lots of great stories. I'm always interested in hearing about the African stories from Sami, and I always hear a different one and a new one from Sami, and the same thing from Howard Berry. So a fine job, man, and I actually love it. So we're here to celebrate a birthday too. It's Sami's birthday. And Sami, I want you to tell us how they celebrate birthdays in Africa.
All right. Traditionally, there's a sacrificial ceremonial meal that we eat. It's yams. Like there's a yam that we cook, and half of the portion you cook, after it's cooked, we mash all the yam, and then add palm oil to half of what you cooked. And then you boil a symbolic number of eggs to symbolize your age. And on that day of your birthday, it's only those who are born on the same day, like if you're born on a Monday, so like we have days of the week, names for the days of the week on which you're born. And it's only those who are born on the day you're born on that can eat from the same plate with you. The others get portions, right? So it's something that is a meal you have to eat by 8 a.m. in the morning. It's the first thing you can. The belief is that your ancestors and all those who preceded you and those who are about to come and share that meal with you. So it's yam, part of it is white, and the other is the palm oil, and then the eggs. Now to dodge the whole thing of eating 65 eggs, we have solved this number of eggs thing. I guess it varies from person to person. But I say since there are 7 days in a week, I do 7 eggs. and then I'll eat, since it's my birthday, I eat more eggs than any other time. So if it's 7, I eat 4, and then the other person, whatever we're going to share. But that's what I've done. I've done that knowing, because growing up, that is the main thing. And then once you've eaten that Samoan meal, it's like your early morning prayers. You've acknowledged the fact that you've been blessed to be alive. And then later on the day, the family might decide they want to cook you a chicken meal or something. Normally that's the day when, if they kill a chicken, you get a piece bigger than everybody else. But under normal circumstances, we the small boys, we get a little piece. And I always joke that we Africans who come here to America, the first thing we overdose on is chicken. Because our home chicken is special. But here in America, somebody can eat the whole bird. A whole chicken. So wow. I mean, so we can't go to Kentucky Fried and buy a whole bucket. So about 2 weeks, 1 month of that, now when you see chicken, no, you don't want it anymore. Then after a while, we learn how to make the chicken different from everybody. Yes. But it's basically that the birthday we're brought up to remember, even though it's your birthday, you have to acknowledge the role ancestors and others play. So, and then.
So this morning we did eat eggs and yams. And we're both born on Tuesday, so we ate out of the same plate.
And there's also the saying that the children who learn to wash their hands well, we get to eat from the same plate as the elders. So if, let's say, you're the most troublesome child, on that day you're born, if there is a very wise, happy, great person in the family born the same day, whether he's a king, yeah, you guys can eat from this, then that's your bragging rights.
Awesome. Well, what should we do now?
Cut the cake.
I'll be down, I'm sorry.